You can run a corporation and not know anything about, say, Austrian economics. So you can make a mistake even if you're at the head of a big corporation. And big corporations, big business elite have often thought that if we don't have foreign outlets for goods, we're going to have depression here and idle resources, and it's going to be really bad for profits. And so they've turned to the government to secure foreign markets for so-called surplus goods. And Mises also wrote about this. If you have protectionism that raise the price of goods higher than they would be in the domestic market, then the corporations can't sell all of their inventory and also get the economies of scale, right? They can't produce enough to get the economies of scale. And if they do produce enough to get the economies of scale, they can't unload all the inventory in the domestic market because the price is higher than the market clearing level. That's the whole point of the protectionism. So what are they going to do with all the surplus? They turn to the government for military, another way, gunboat diplomacy, other methods to open up foreign markets. And that explains a good deal of what happened in the 19th century and the 20th century, looking for foreign markets for certain privileged business interests. And this sometimes can lead to war, colonialism and war. So those are some of the motives for war. Politicians may also act to secure interests, quote, interests, national interests, that may be jeopardized by something that's going on in some foreign place. It seems to me the mark of a global empire is that nothing can happen anywhere in the world without it potentially involving the interests of the imperial power. Okay, that seems to me one of the definitions of an empire. Nothing can happen anywhere without it having some potential impact on quote, the interests, as interpreted by the policymakers, of the imperial power, which means we have to always be ready to respond to anything, right? And this is the way the U.S. has acted throughout a lot of the 20th century. I mean, it's hard to think of a region on the earth where there could be a coup or something that our policymakers wouldn't say, uh-oh, some interest of ours is affected. We better be watching this very closely and be ready to pounce or do something. Regime change, send in money, send in the CIA, something. Covert, overt, but something. I don't think you can name a place. And eventually, it'll be interplanetary. Right? Something won't be able to happen on, Pluto. It's not a planet anymore, is it? The former planet called Pluto, without our being concerned about our interests. And this is sort of the Henry Kissinger position. Also, Henry Kissinger said we had to respond to everything because otherwise our credibility would slip. So no matter how small and inconsequential, if it would be perceived as our lacking credibility in the world, if we don't respond, then we have to respond, which means we have to respond to things that aren't even really threatening any interest, no matter how you conceive them, because to not do it is to tell the world we're weak, we're not credible, and so we can't do that either. So in other words, it means we have to run the world, essentially. This is what the thinking leads to, and of course, not just leads to it. I think we've been doing it. Okay. So the military is a means to political/economic ends. Politicians are obviously concerned with military matters, but they're not only concerned with military matters. They may have other political considerations, which the military people themselves would not be attuned to. So it may not be in the political interests of the rulers to do just about anything to win the war, because that could have repercussions on the domestic population. They got to be juggling all those things. So the politicians know that wars are not military purely. They have other considerations. Not that these are benign considerations, but they're other. Now, war, of course, always has a domestic side, which is kind of lost, too. And you've all read and heard talks about this and thought about it. We can't get away from the very unlibertarian consequences at home regarding the war. I mean, ruling classes hold power so that they can live off the toil of the domestic population. That's the whole point. And because the people ruled always far outnumber the rulers, right? The number of rulers are always very small compared to the rest of the population. Ideology and propaganda are necessary to maintain the allegiance of the subject population. You got to tell them stories to keep them loyal. War is very useful for keeping the population in a state of fear and therefore trustful of their rulers. It's been one of the best things they ever came up with, right, for keeping the population rallied tightly around the flag. H.L. Mencken put this, as well as anybody, and probably better than anybody. The whole aim of practical politics is to keep the populace alarmed and hence clamorous to be led to safety by menacing it with an endless series of hobgoblins, all of them imaginary. Okay, that's Mencken. War and putative external threats are used to justify conscription, higher taxes, regimentation, suspension of civil liberties, lucrative contracts for cronies, let's not forget that, and the like, all this other stuff that goes with it. So, every war is a government program. Now, what does this mean? It means it shares certain characteristics with other government programs. So let's focus on that for a moment. On the surface, one characteristic it shares with other government programs is its sheer incompetence. Now, even conservatives like to laugh about how incompetent government is at some of the domestic things that it does. And here, again, the double standard kicks in. Because there's this sense that when government goes to war, especially the U.S. government, I'll talk about American exceptionalism in a moment, but mention it here, especially when the U.S. government goes to war, suddenly this bumbling bureaucracy is the super competent, well-oiled machine. It's amazing that in that one area it can be great, and maybe a couple of other areas like the war on drugs, but in this one area, it's this well-oiled machine, and so many other things. Conservatives like to make jokes about how stupid and ridiculous the bureaucracy is. I mean, do they not listen to themselves? I mean, it's ridiculous. I mean, a model of this would be, say, like two models of this would be Rush Limbaugh and Sean Hannity. Okay, and I think they may be the same person. I think the Rush Limbaugh is like a big bodysuit that Sean Hannity wears. But listen to that. I mean, there are moments when these guys, if they're talking about medical care, will get that just right. That the government can be guaranteed to screw it up. Now they can't go very deep. Obviously, they talk more than 2 minutes and they're already out of their depth. But at least they can get the soundbite out that government will mess it up. Get them on war a minute later. In fact, I heard Sean Hannity do this in the space of like 2 minutes. He was denouncing a plan for nationalized health care because the government's totally incompetent. And then a minute or two later, it was on his program, he's talking about how competent the government is at fighting wars. So, if I wasn't a Thomas Saucian, I would say he's schizophrenic, but I think that's a myth. That's another talk, though. I couldn't get that one on the program. I think there are some psychiatric aspects to this whole question of war, by the way, which I can't go into, but so we better hurry along here. Okay, the competence. Now, if you want to, of course, we're led to believe that the government is super competent because they control the information. The government controls the information. It's very selective. I love the movie Wag the Dog. If you haven't seen that movie, watch it. And don't just watch it once. I don't need to tell you this. You won't want to watch it just once. You will want to watch it maybe once a month. It's one of the best political lessons you can get anywhere. I won't give them too much of the movie away, except to say that the war they fought in that movie, nobody died. So in a sense, it was a better war than the ones we're seeing. I guess it would be an advancement if the government started doing what they do in that movie, because at least nobody died. Okay, that's something. Well, actually, a couple people died, but collateral damage. But in that movie, Robert De Niro plays this great character. He's Mr. Fix-It. He comes in. He's a consultant. So when the president's got a scandal going on, in this case it was a sexual scandal, indiscretion with a brownie, a young girl, like 14-year-old girl, who was on touring the White House with her troupe. So they call him Mr. Fix-It. It's right before the election. They call him Mr. Fix-It to fix this up, to buy time until the election. Take people's mind off this. They're only 11 days out from the election. They just got to distract people for 11 days. And people say, that's too much. 11 days is too much. Anyway, he concocts a phony war to get everybody's mind off of the little